Teachers at Calera Intermediate School filled their cars with food Tuesday, ready to bring meals to students in need.
We're finding now that families are changing, and some folks that were okay have now lost their jobs.
The school's counselor, Lori Martin, says community partners are helping to make this possible.
Right now, we're going to do our hardest to make sure no one goes hungry. I think that's always been our goal, but we see a need right now.
Ben Nelson pastors Collectivist Church. Earlier this month, his church sent students home with 2 weeks of groceries. Now he partnered with Olive Garden and Piggly Wiggly to put together frozen pasta kits to send home.
We're all feeling the need to some degree, and we just always need to know that there's going to be someone who has more need than we have.
Rice and beans and pasta.
No matter who you are on that kind of list of things. So for some of us, we're worried about if we're going to run out of toilet paper, and other people are worried about if they're going to run out of food.
That food is crucial to student success. Instruction begins again Monday.
We know that if they're hungry or if they're worried about a situation at home, they're not able to focus on their learning.
This is a challenge for all churches, that we get to actually be what we say we are instead of just saying it every Sunday.
His church plans to keep providing meals and meeting needs. In Calera, Lauren Walsh, ABC 3340 News.
Now, I want to turn to a friend of mine that I've been knowing since he was a little boy. He's a prominent pastor in the Birmingham area, the central part of the state of Alabama. And he has a term that he has started using, Decentralized Church. Ben, thank you for joining us today. Been trying to figure out what we call this when we're all cooped up in our homes, yet we have the connectivity, we have an incredible opportunity to build relationships, we have an incredible opportunity to share the gospel. So tell me exactly what that looks like for you and your flock. What does that look like? Decentralized church.
But we had already structured ourselves as a church, not for COVID-19, but for what we saw was the future of the church, which actually looked a lot like the early models of the church as well. And so what we do is we have what are called missional communities. Some people call them house churches. Some people call them whatever, that are these standalone communities that meet together, worship together, break bread together, and on mission together. And we've kind of decentralized from our corporate gatherings when it comes to things like discipleship, when it comes to things like missions, when it comes to pastoring. And we do that all in our houses. And then we gather together on Sundays. Well, we used to gather together on Sundays for big corporate worship and celebration. So we call it table and temple. And that's kind of what we set ourselves up to do prior to all of this. Well, I'll say for COVID-19, we've all been practicing for this, right? Like when we've been in social spaces with other individuals, we've still been on our phones, right? And that's kind of the joke around, is that we've used what was at one point supposed to be social networking to be antisocial in our gatherings. And so we've been all practicing for what it means to be social but not in person. And now that we've been kind of mandated to be separate, how can we actually use what we've been practicing probably negatively in a positive light? And so for us, it looked easy at first. Decentralizing the church meant meeting in small gatherings. But then as we watched, the leadership of our country and the world start making those gatherings smaller and smaller, then we had to actually look even more digitally. Now, Collectivist Church, my church, is we call ourselves a modern day expression of the early church. And so what that means is we want to take the early church's heart and use modern day context. And so what more modern day context than what me and you are doing right now than to use a digital format in order to connect with others, in order to share the gospel with others, in order to advance the kingdom with others. But what it also does is it actually starts putting the weight off of the pastor and the priest and starts putting it on the people, which is what it's been about the whole time. Like we used to have a priest, and the priest's role was to go to people on God's behalf and to go to God on people's behalf, right? And then after the cross was had and the veil was torn, we took on that priestly role, not we as a preacher, but we as the people. And then eventually with time, we started putting the priest back at the center again. And I don't know when that happened. I could probably look in history and see the trend of when that happened, but there was a point where we eventually just kind of went back to a central person instead of saying, let the table be the center, the Heavenly Father's table should be the center of our gatherings instead of a pulpit being the center of our gatherings. And so this right now, I think, maybe I'm wrong, one of the good things that's coming out of this is that the church has been decentralized, whether you chose to be or not. And now your process of learning to do digital and learning to be the church as individuals has been expedited. And the question really is, are you going to do well with it in the midst of COVID-19? And are you going to continue it once things go back to whatever normal is?
One of the things in decentralized church, as you call it, is a bit paradoxical in that one would think that everything is online. And obviously from the ABC 3340 piece that we just saw, that's not so. You guys are out and about and you're making a difference in the community. So how do you take it from social interaction online to disbursement of God's people out and about to make a real difference?
Even before this, we had a phrase that was, we gather to scatter to gather. That's the phrase we always said. And so what that meant was we gathered together, which used to be on a Sunday morning, which now is around a digital format. We do a digital online worship experience on Sundays, and then we scatter into our missional communities and into our individual lives in order to gather, not back to gather other brothers and sisters, sons and daughters of God, people, and reach them with the gospel, and doing that through missions and doing that through evangelism. So for us, here's the truth. I got to be the face for the news segment and for other things that are happening. But half the stuff, I don't even know what's happening. I'll get a call from a school system and be like, hey, I hear y'all are doing this for us this Sunday. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, right? And because we're not centralizing our missions around an individual or around a board, but instead we are allowing and releasing people to do it. I had someone today that posted and said, has anybody else seen this where cars are showing up at hospitals and like praying over the staff? And they were like, they tagged me and said, we should do this. And I said, do it. It's not a we thing. It's do it. And all of a sudden they went and it's hard to say how many missional communities right now. We have a lot of them that are doing different things. We have groups that are providing food. We have people that are getting, if you're a vulnerable person, you can call this cell phone number and they'll go and pick up your groceries for you, clean them and put them on your front porch. We got people who are donating sanitation supplies. We have people doing everything. The peak of the iceberg above the water for most of us has been our Sunday gatherings, right? Like if someone came and did an audit on your church, they would see from your finances, from your social media accounts, from your meetings, that what you are essentially is a worship gathering. But we know as a church, there's a lot more below the surface, but we're not resourcing it. We're not leveraging it. We're not doing anything with it because we're doing everything for that little peak above it. And our goal was just that we wanted to elevate what was underneath the water to show that it's important. That's why we do our tables and our temples are side by side. The best model, I'll leave it with this, for discipleship does come from Mike Green. And you see it in the business world now. It's been adopted in a lot of ways. It's I do, you watch. I do, you help. You do, I help. You do, I cheer. So that's kind of my model. And then we release people, go and do it. And I release people way too early now. I'm like, they're going to fail. I almost know it. In my mind, they're going to fail at this. But I would rather fail with them than stop them from succeeding. It's a kingdom thing. It's what are they going to fail at? Is that person equipped? Is that person ready? I don't know. Were the disciples ready? Were you ready? Were any of us ready? Let's just release them. Let's encourage them. Let's equip them. Let's resource them. And let's fail with them if they fail and help them succeed if they can succeed. If you are hunkering down during COVID-19 as a church, if you're just like, I'm hunkering down, I'm going to maybe offer something online, and my goal is to make sure financially we can make it through this thing, and then when we come out on the other side, it'll be back to church as normal, then you're going to have a limited capability of advancing the kingdom post-COVID-19. And what I mean by that is there will be a new normal. Now, I'm kind of a futurist in my mindset. I think I have a decent idea after talking to a bunch of friends of mine who have the same kind of mindset of what post-COVID-19 will look like. But I think we all will agree it will not be the same. And so in the midst of this crisis is when we should be the church more than ever. Instead of being sad and sitting back and saying, I can't go to church on Sunday, I think we should be asking ourselves, what opportunity does this allow us in order to do the good things God's called us to do, to care for the poor, to care for the widows, for care for the, like, what do we do in this situation to do that? Now, the second question, I think, is a little bit more about what's ahead. For us, the church, it's the early church. Let's take the early church and look at our modern day context with our modern day technology, with our modern day resources, and how do we take the heart of what God started and that he issued through first the tabernacle, then the temple, then the early church, and what does that mean for a modern day context? And I think we all should be asking that question right now. But I think it's an opportunity. And I think if you do well in the midst of COVID-19, you can continue to do something great post, and the kingdom can be advanced and the gospel can be spread more than ever. Here's my prayer. Last thing, prayer is that by the time we end this video, that more people come to know Jesus through personal evangelism than they ever did when the doors of the church were open. That's my goal.
Ben Nelson, thank you for joining us today. We greatly appreciate it. All the best to you. We're praying for you. We're praying for your ministry, and we're praying for a resolution to this, a terrible virus.
Thanks, Terry.
And thank you for joining us today. It's an honor to be with you, a privilege to be able to serve with you and to be a servant for you. Remember, you can find additional resources at terrywhilhite.com/summit20.